I will not say strict, but pretty well formalized to avoid any misunderstanding. But for somebody who used to work on different areas, you might be surprised and you will have to discover this process. So we are here typically to help you guys on this kind of process. So actually this Eclipse development process is described, and you will be able to retrieve all this information on these different pages. And here is the only table of content of the development process. And I will mainly talk about only the part 6.2, all the other parts to explain what is a committer, what do we mean by code and resources, and all the other things you can discover by yourself. It's mainly definition and some explanation. Reviews as well. I will not dig on reviews. I will certainly mention a few of them. But so it's a document life. So we're improving every time. I also put you some other links to help you going through these kind of things as well. So I myself, when I have some question, I also connect and ask to my Eclipse buddies, and we have so it's pretty easy to ask them. So don't hesitate to ask a question to me or directly to them if you have any concern about something in building an Eclipse project or during the life cycle of our project. So the project life cycle is this one. So it's pretty straightforward. We have what we name a pre-proposal, and I will explain a bit more what we mean by pre-proposal. Well, proposal, which actually, when you check out our project timeline, we are supposed to provide the proposal by the end of this month, by the end of month 6, and I will let you know why it's not realistic to do that today. Then after that, we move to what we name an incubation phase, where we start doing releases. And then after that, a project can move to mature phase. Mature phase doesn't mean that you start to be good developers. It more means that you start being good open source Eclipse developers. So it's nothing to do with your capabilities or the quality of your project. You can have a very good project, but maybe for now it's not, you don't have regular releases, you don't maybe are completely transparent when you develop, maybe you are not following always, and you are not comfortable completely with all the Eclipse process. So the maturity is something that might take some time to reach. I don't expect that we will be able to reach by the end of the project, by the end of the 3 years, but actually it really depends on who is involved in the project. So for example, if you have a project and people used to already have behind them 2 or 3 other Eclipse projects, they can reach the maturity level pretty quickly, comparing to some other who are discovering everything from scratch. So here's what you have: a special form, special page. So here the link at the bottom of this page, this slide, where actually you fill a form with all this information. So project name is very important, and this project name, it's important in terms of branding. So we will check for you, or you will have to check if actually obstacle it's not already a used name. If it's used and we cannot get the ownership, then we will have to change for another name. Why it's important? It's important for 2 reasons. The first one is because Eclipse will have to own this name. So it's not, nobody in the project will be able to own it by Eclipse, but Eclipse, mainly because if one of our partners decide to move on, to leave the project, we don't want that he keeps the project name for himself. So it's for this reason that we want to be sure that the name will stay forever at Eclipse. Like that, it will not impact anybody else in the project. After that, you have to describe the background. So why you did this project, what you try to solve, the scope, of course, of your project. A description, so it's a short text, can be, I will say, one page long, maybe more if you need to express more things, but the idea is how you can clearly explain to somebody who is an engineer but not in your domain. So it's really, we are here to present the project to the rest of the Eclipse community. So people are not in the IoT, are not in core and so on, but they might be interested in, and they want to have a good quick overview of what we're doing in this project. So this description is very important, and it might have to be reconsidered several times. So usually when you write a description, people ask you questions, so you have to clarify a few things during this description. So after that, why we decide to put in Eclipse? So you might have to answer this kind of question. The licenses that you will use, sometimes either you use the default Eclipse license, sometimes you have some constraints for some reasons, so you might have to use different licenses, so you have to mention these licenses, and like that we can help you either to understand if really you need these other licenses, or if there is some incompatibility issue with the project. Then after that, the initial contribution. So we have to provide some initial code. So there is no reason to start a project if there is no code. And this initial contribution, we have to identify from where the code comes from. So it's very important. You need to know the ownership of everybody. So if somebody wrote some code, each single source file will have a copyright. So, and normally the guy who wrote, the organization who wrote, should have agreed to share this code with the foundation. The scheduling, we already have the scheduling for the next couple of years. This means the different releases that we will provide and the different features that we will provide, so it should be easy. After that, we will decide if we want to use what kind of repository we want to use. Today, we support Git. So in this case, it's completely hosted by Eclipse or GitHub. In this case, we have our own organization inside GitHub, and under this umbrella, we have all our GitHub projects. So it's pretty easy because sometimes people start building their project on top of GitHub, and then at some point they want to really open source their stuff under Eclipse. So it's just we have to just copy the project for their GitHub to our GitHub organization. So it's straightforward. And finally, the people who are initially involved with this project in terms of development. So who will be the project lead, or will be the project leads? No more than 2. Usually it's not, because as soon as you start to have more project leads, that would be a pretty big mess. Project leads, his role is not to give the direction of the project. It's more to help you elect a committer. So it's more a term of organization, be a point of contact between Eclipse community and the project, but not really a guy who will decide everything for you. So there is no reason you can choose the guy which is the most available for the project and to take care of that. And then after that, you have the initial committers. Choose all the committers that you think might be involved or will be involved in the project, because if you don't choose them initially, later on you will have to go through the committer election process, which is straightforward, but nevertheless it takes some time. And all these committers will have to fill some forms, so you have some paperwork to do to guarantee that actually the code that you will deliver, your organization accepts to let you deliver this kind of code, to be sure that everything is clear with everybody. So you fill this kind of form, you prepare this kind of form, and it's your really pre-proposal phase when we will help you, the Eclipse Management Organization will help you to fill in this form, and it takes generally a month or less to go through all this phase. So once the proposal is written, it starts to be publicly available and announced, and people will be able to review, to comment, and you might have to complete the description with some more information, because people are really concerned and interested by that, and it takes usually a month to reach this phase. Once during the proposal phase, then after that you might have to refine again your description, provide more details about your code, and and then you have all the paperwork that you have to do with the committers, and also you will have this IP review which has to happen with this initial contribution. So initial contribution, you will provide some code, and normally until now, until 6 months ago, we were going through all the source code that you provide, plus we're checking also each single library that you are using to be sure that these libraries are acceptable based on the license that we use. Sometimes, for example, we cannot accept libraries which is a GPL license, because in this case it's viral and all the project will be a GPL project, and we don't want such things. Now what we do, we make a full check of the source code, and we have what we name a type A review. And then later on, during the project, when it starts to be a little bit more mature, we go to the type B when we dig also on the library. But because this process was pretty long, going to take 6 months, it was pretty embarrassing for some projects, so we tried to make it shorten, and for this reason that we have now these two type A, type B projects, where initially we just inform people saying, okay, it's a type A project, so guys, maybe some of this library has not been correctly checked, so be aware of that. So don't build all your business on top of that. You might wait for type B to be able to build a real full solution on that. But at least people can use it, but it just cannot commercialize it without taking some risk. Initial contribution, what does it mean? So it means that so you will describe all the third-party libraries. We have a dedicated project named Orbit, which helps you to identify the libraries that you are using has been already identified as clean libraries and reusable libraries. As I mentioned, all the source code, all the source files, including build files, POM, XML, so all these kind of files have their own their copyrights described. So we have a patent for copyright. There is actually also a project in Eclipse to help you to complete all this copyright on all your files. You don't have to do it by hand; it can be really boring. So when we'll arrive to at this point, I will share with you this pointer to this project. As I mentioned, there is a branding point. It's very important because if we have to change for another name, usually people will have they use the original name in their code, so we have to change the name to the new name. So there are some refactoring work to do. There is some refactoring work to do also for example, for packages in Java, because all the packages will be named org.eclipse some subdomain and obstacle, for example, or directly obstacle something. So it's important this naming convention will be clearly defined. So we have to work on the name as soon as possible to be able to block the name and to be sure that everything is clear with that. So it will impact a lot. It can impact a lot of projects afterwards. So because of these reasons, so we have two deliverables we are really depend on. It's D51, which is a project proposal for obstacle. So I mentioned that to you, Mary and Tassi, that we have really to delay to M12 because today we have nothing really to describe. So I don't know how it will work if we have to do an amendment or something like that.
Yeah, we have to do the change request.
Change request.
Some other we have postponed the 1.1, 2.1, 3.1, maybe to align with this time schedule also.
Okay. And so we must agree on the architecture. So it means what do we want to describe? Because what we will describe is supposed to be available in the project. So we need to agree on architecture and what in this architecture we want to share with the open source. Because we don't have to share everything, but we have to share what we name it as must be self-sufficient part of the project. So it means that somebody should be able to download our project and run it, or run a reference implementation, maybe which not all the smartness, but good coverage, so people can have a good idea of how it works, and so on. So it's very important to have this level of understanding of our project. So we need to be enough advanced in architecture and in this kind of organization to be able to describe this level of detail in our proposal. And of course, the first release will be our initial contribution at this point. So we'll see if we can stay in sync. Normally, this first release was planned for M12 as well. So if we are able to stay hooked to that, that will be perfect. We will decide. But with the brand issue is, as I mentioned, can be an issue. So we need to be sure that everything will be correctly set. So my first work will be to work on the name. That will be all set. If we have another name, we might have to do some brainstorming on that to find another name which will match. We can keep both names. I mean that we can have a project name for Obstacle, it stays the same, but for Eclipse we'll have to use another name. Okay, then as I said, the incubation phase. Incubation phase is not an insult. It doesn't mean because we have an act for that mean that you are new, as I said, new developer. It just means that we are learning about how to do open source development in Eclipse. So we have to follow this process. We have to learn about this process, and also we have this, as I mentioned to you, the IP process running in parallel. Be aware that we have a team taking care of that. And this team is taking care not only the initial contribution, but all during the life cycle of the project. Regularly, they will check the source code, and they will check if we have changed any library, if we are using a new version of the library, and if this new version is still correct and we can use it. So all this backstage work about IP clearance is done by the foundation. Here I wanted to mention to you the committer election, how it works. As I mentioned to you earlier, it's based on meritocracy. So it's not because you know Bob that you can vote for him. You need to have a stronger beliefs about his capability to contribute to the project. Usually when part of the initial project is pretty easy because usually we try to push most of these guys in as committer initially. What happened, and I really hope that will happen by the end of the project, we'll start maybe having some people will start using our stuff. And in this case, usually they start by bringing some bugs to us. And then after that, they might even start bringing some patches to us. And then we will consider that their contribution works and really they have a good understanding of the project. They are good contributors. They really understand how we are working all together. And then we will try to promote them and be directly a committer in the project. So and then we go through the selection process. The election process will consist in nomination. And then after that, all the committer will vote. And either there is no vote, so that the vote is cancelled, so the guy is not elected. Or it's rejected. So in this case, you have sort of, depending on how many committers you have, you need to have a certain amount of committer who have to vote. And then it's completed. As I mentioned to you, we have our project manager committee who will verify that actually the vote was fair and you just didn't vote for a guy because of the color of his eyes, but really or the quantity of money he has in his wallet, but really about the quality of his work. And then they will finally approve his selection. So I mentioned about meritocracy, openness, also of course that you didn't reject somebody just because he works for a competition and these kind of things. Then after that you have some paperwork to do. Again, it's something that it's important to let you know, be aware of that you will have to go through this process, not only the election, once you are elected or when you are selected initially in the project, then you have to go through this paperwork. So either you have two cases, either your company is member of Eclipse, and in this case it's pretty straightforward, you just have to sign one document, or it's not the case, then you have to sign two documents. One is yours, individual committer agreement, and the other one is you have to have the Eclipse committer employer consent form to sign as well by your employer. Be sure that you are allowed to share your code, and nobody will claim later on that this code was not actually authorized to share. So I talked to you already about this mature phase. I will hope that we'll be able to reach. It's not a big deal if it takes longer. There are some projects who stay forever in incubation phase because they don't need or they don't want to have regular releases. Some other reach this mature phase pretty early, so we will see what's going on. And at some point, maybe some project, just because they are not, they don't leave, nothing happens anymore with them, so they move to their archive status. And then it's the project is not throughout, just people are informed that nobody is really managing it anymore. It's not really in life anymore, but you will still can reopen it if you want to reactivate it. It's possible, or you can, somebody always can grab it and reinstall it, and locally if they want to do something with your project, so it's not kept forever at Eclipse. Here we go. So it was my presentation. Do you have any question on that? You are pretty chatty since this morning, so go ahead.
Hello, this is Pasi from Oulu. So we were discussing. During the break that is there any kind of project that could
any kind of what? Sorry, but Pasi, I misunderstood.
So do you have any kind of project where the newcomers could join and start to learn how to do Eclipse project, kind of introductory projects in your system?
No, I don't know if I'm sure that I understand. So if there is any introductory project, you have all this documentation that I mentioned. You can read. It's but after that you just go and fill the form, and then you start going through the process. And we have people inside the foundation which will help you, asking you questions. You have some question are automatically generated by the process. Some other people will remind you if you missed something, if you didn't fill a form or something like that. They will help you, and if not, they will contact me, and I will inform you and I will explain you what's going on and how you can fix these things. There is no real other thing like that. I'm not sure that I understood properly, Pasi, your point, maybe.
My point was newcomer developers joining the Eclipse activities. I was meaning that.
Okay. So in this case, I mean that either he will use Git, and usually in this case he will also use Gitter, or he will use GitHub, and then in both cases he's comfortable with that. As a committer, normally it's I mean that you will use pull request to push your code and to ask your peer to review your code that you are pushing to the repository. If you think it's not necessary, it's just an internal repo or some repo, and you own all the code, you can directly just update your repository like you used to do with Git. So there is no special thing that we teach around that. We expect that enough enough documentation available on the web to learn about these tools. Are you comfortable with this kind of tools, or do you need more help on that?
Yeah, I think that that was the answer. We were expecting something like that. So I mean, yes, there are your tools and your environments available for the development, and then you, for example, use GitHub environment.
Yeah, we are not pushing any methodology, like for example use Scrum or use a waterfall process or use Kanban or whatsoever. It's really depend on people, because everybody has his own way of working. For example, stable project, for historical reasons, they use a sort of sort of Scrum, which is named Eclipse Way process, which is a sort of Scrum process, but specific done by Eclipse when Scrum was not so famous at this time. But there is no other really formal methodology that we are promoting. So it's really feel free to use whatever you want. When we name the development process, it's more that some general frameworks that we ask you to respect for all this notion of transparency, meritocracy, and openness. It's more about that.
Okay, thank you.
Another question?
Hi, I have a question. In case the obstacle platform is decided to be an Eclipse-based project, and we decide to use multiple blocks, say Cora, Hono, KT, or something like that. So when we are using multiple blocks, I mean to say that obstacle is going to be an amalgamation of different projects. I see that each and every project has different contributors, as in from different firms. So how will the development process look like?
I mean that you are reusing external projects, so it can be either from Eclipse or outside of Eclipse. Not a big deal. When it's directly from Eclipse, it's easy. We know that there are always the IP diligence is okay. So there is no changes, just in the description. Usually when you use some existing project, you will mention them. You will say, okay, this project is based on Cura, is based on Capua, it's based on Hobbit or whatsoever. They use Hobbit and so on. It's the only real explanation that you have to provide. And then after that, your project will live its life. So it's important for the others to know that you are using their project like that. If they want to do some major change, or they want to exchange about you or whatsoever, they might be able to contact you directly and to know, listen guys, we are planning to do this kind of, are you okay with that, and so on. So it's meant about an exchange, but there is no more dependency than that.
Okay, and also, like I said, since if it is going to be Eclipse based and an amalgamation of different projects, I see that there might be, say, partners who are not directly involved in the obstacle project. So in case of some change request is required in some block, how does that work?
Okay, so for these components, we have to verify if, I mean, that a piece of obstacle that you want to, if the code that you want to put in Eclipse, it depends on some other components. We need to verify that these components are freely available.
Okay.
So it's a main point. So it can be a different licenses, can be a BSD license, MIT license, you name it. It should be a non-viral license, so it should not be a GPL license. But after that, people can share. Sometimes just a library. It can be just a binary. You don't have to share always the source. But the idea is people need to be able to access to this library, freely access to this library.
Okay. And just one last question, actually. Since obstacle is going to be more automotive specific, and in the event that we find there has to be some modification done to some component or some project that is being used here, is that also possible? As in the obstacle partners want to make some change in say a particular component to make it more automotive specific, or to add in an additional feature which probably is not required for the project for the other project as such, but it would be useful for obstacle. So is that also a possibility which can be done?
Yeah, actually, when you do a change in a project, normally when you touch the core technology, you are supposed to always it's a part of the license with Eclipse. You can reuse it as you want, you can tell what you want, but if you change the core, or if you fix some bugs in the core, you have to give back the code to the community. Now, if you make a fork of the code because you decide to have your own implementation, after that you will decide with the project team, with the committers, how do you want to integrate this? You want to manage as a separate fork? Do you want to manage as a separate project, or you just don't want to see it in your project? So you will have to decide what is the best for your project.
Okay. Yeah, that's about my questions.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Hey, I'm very proud I will be able to say to Benjamin and Rob that I had several questions myself. Wow. I was not expecting so many questions. You waked up finally, guys. Thank you very much. Okay, I appreciate that. So thank you, and I wish you a great end of day, and we will talk together tomorrow morning again.
Finnish time at 10 o'clock, Central European time at 9
9.
o'clock.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Have a
thank you.
nice afternoon.
Thank you all.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.